Hey everyone, I'm back with another review. Today I'll be talking about the first initial arc of Kevin Smith's 2001 reboot of Volume 3 of Green Arrow, which is the first 10 issues of the series in the Quiver storyline. Written by Kevin Smith, illustrated by Phil Hester, with Andy Parks on inks. So the story starts out with Batman and Superman standing on a rooftop on top of the Daily Planet building in Metropolis, talking about the fact that because the sun has disappeared in the events of Final Night, where Hal Jordan, taken over by the fear entity Parallax, attempted to blot out the sun after trying to make himself a god and remake the universe in his own image. Superman feels a tingle or a touch of something that just left this person, which comes into play later on. We then cut to Roy Harper, who is the former sidekick of Green Arrow, aka Oliver Queen. Roy Harper, who is lamenting over the time spent with his mentor as his sidekick as Speedy, and some of the lessons that Roy learned from Ollie or Oliver, not only in the aspects of archery but also in crime fighting, in terms of the waiting game, when he's on stakeout and he's actually saying that the waiting is the worst part, thanks Dad, quote unquote, because Ollie was actually a father figure to him throughout most of his life. We then also see Dinah Lance, or Black Canary, doing the dishes and remembering a similar situation with Ollie, and it really showcases a really loving relationship between the two in spite of their ups and downs. She's also shown to have some conflicting feelings towards Ollie, in terms of, while there was love and romance and adventure with them as a couple and in the Justice League and their own adventures where they teamed up, there was also, betrayals, secrets, that kind of thing, which sort of didn't fracture the relationship, but it definitely put a bit of a dampener on it at the time, in spite of the fact that Ollie died saving the world in the events of Final Night, whereby he actually stopped a bomb going off over Metropolis, which was in a plane, and got his arm caught in the bomb. Basically, Superman said, "I'll get you out of there, even if I have to X-ray vision your arm out of its socket and burn your arm off." But Ollie said, "No, you go ahead, this is my chance, gonna go out a hero," and he subsequently died in the ensuing bomb explosion. At the same time, we also see other characters sort of lamenting over the loss of Ollie. I don't know why I keep saying Ollie, I should say Oliver, but Ollie's just shorter and easier. Also, he shows up at the end of issue 1, saving an elderly gentleman from some unscrupulous characters by the name of Stanley, who actually offers to put Ollie up and give him a roof over his head while he tries to figure out why he's back from the dead and what his purpose is, and also as he tries to sort of readjust to the world where Ollie's been dead for a couple of years, probably about 6 years, I think, according to the news article or the news broadcast and some of the newspapers that Ollie reads over the time as he starts to sort of rebuild his life. At the same time, we have Green Arrow confronting a dirty councilman who is taking illicit pics of a young woman. So Ollie pretty much dispatches his goons and then comes back to the mayor himself saying, "I want to register a complaint with my district," which is, there's some really great sort of humorous dialogue from Green Arrow on the part of Kevin Smith, which is it really showcases Oliver's humanity and his relatability, considering he's not only the Emerald Archer, but he's also the everyman of the Justice League, similar to how Clint Barton or Hawkeye is the everyman of the Avengers, meaning that they're the guys who've got no superpowers, and yet they are masters of their own craft, which is obviously with the bow and arrow. The young woman that Ollie saves from the dirty councilman, Mia Dearden, actually takes some advice from Ollie and actually stands up to her pimp after the events with the councilman, and actually says to him in no uncertain terms, after pretty much beating him senseless and holding a knife to his throat, saying, "If you come after me, I will kill you." So she stands up to him and then leaves, and she actually comes back later on in the story, further on down the line. We also see Green Arrow running into some thugs down at the docks, where Black Manta, the Aquaman villain, shows up, and he's also stopped by Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman. There's some really great heartfelt bromance dialogue exchanges between Green Arrow and Oliver. Basically, both of them pretty much jinxing each other at the same time, saying, "What the hell happened to you?" Because this series sort of picks up where Kevin Smith actually stopped reading comics, or 10 years after he stopped reading comics. So after the whole Crisis on Infinite Earths thing, you know, where DC reset their continuity, Ollie pretty much died. Aquaman was the harpoon guy with his hand missing, so Ollie's like, "What the hell happened to you?" You have Wally West as the Flash after the death of Barry Allen in Crisis on Infinite Earths. So Ollie's having to readjust to that. He's also having to readjust to there being a current Green Arrow, which is Connor Hawke, which is Ollie's illegitimate son from when he was in college. You have Kyle Rayner as the current Green Lantern, whereas Ollie remembers the Green Lantern that he remembers is obviously his best friend Hal Jordan. And Ollie retains his memories up until the point where Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams took over the Green Lantern Green Arrow title, and they sent Ollie and Hal on a road trip through America, pretty much designed to bring Hal back down to earth, so to speak, and also addressing some real world issues. There was racial tensions, there was there was religious tensions, there was, drugs, there was the incident where Roy Harper, or Speedy, actually became addicted to heroin. So that was one of the sort of outlets for the Green Lantern Green Arrow title at the time, talking about the real world issues in the world at that time during the 70s. We also have some really great reunions with the members of the JLA, particularly with Superman, who's overjoyed to see Ollie. We also see Wally West, respectfully being courteous to him, and Ollie remember him, Wally West, as Kid Flash. We also see a really heartfelt reunion between Diana, or Wonder Woman, and Green Arrow as well. And we also see Batman actually conducting some tests on Ollie to see if he's actually the genuine article, discussing with the then current Batgirl, Stephanie Brown, which Oliver is obviously none too pleased when he awakens and finds out that he's being run tests on by Bruce Wayne or Batman. So Oliver and Bruce discuss the events of Final Night, whereby Ollie actually shot Hal Jordan, or Parallax, in the chest with an arrow, thereby stopping his then former best friend from blotting out the sun and remaking the universe. So they then decide to take a drive to jog Ollie's memory. They go back to Ollie's former estate, which is in ruins. Unfortunately for the two of them, there's also some really great dialogue on the way in the bat plane between Batman and Green Arrow, especially with the sort of originality ideas, whereby, you had one time you had Ollie with the arrow car and the arrow cave, and Batman even says to him, "God, man, did you really have an original idea back then?" Unfortunately for the two of them, Etrigan the Demon shows up to pretty much fry Ollie for being a hollow, which we find out later on what that means further on down the line in the story. Unfortunately, there's also quite a tense battle between Green Arrow and Etrigan, and there's also a really funny takedown on Green Arrow's part with Etrigan using a fire extinguisher arrow, which Batman pretty much out and out says, "I will never mock your trick arrows again," which is again more really funny dialogue on the part of Kevin Smith. The artwork and the inking throughout by Phil Hester and Andy Parks is absolutely fantastic. It's cartoony, it's semi-stylized, it's comic booky type artwork, but there's also a refinement to it. It looks really, really good. This is actually the first time I've seen Phil Hester's artwork on the printed page, so to speak, besides screenshots. And there's also a really heartfelt and beautiful reunion between Ollie and Diana when she actually sees him alive for the first time. She says, "Oh my God, it's you." And they kiss and make up, sort of, and she's sort of crying, and she says, "Call me Pretty Bird." And Ollie just says to her, "It's good to see you, Pretty Bird," because it's one of his nicknames that he had for her. So it's a really sort of beautiful reunion between Ollie and Dinah. There's also, again, more great bromance dialogue and exchanges between Oliver and Hal Jordan, who is now the Spectre at this time. And again, Oliver is like, what the hell happened to you? Why are you suddenly the Spectre? The last I remember of you, we were taking a road trip through America. You were still a Green Lantern. Where's your Green Lantern uniform? You know, where's the rest of the Corps members? And so, or the Corps members, I should say. Corps or Corps is sort of up for debate which sort of pronunciation of the Green Lantern Corps is the correct pronunciation. So we then get the revelation from Hal Jordan as the Spectre for Ollie's return from the grave and how Ollie came back. And more than anything, this really showcases, even though Hal was evil at the time, he still loved his best friend so much that he wanted to bring him back as a sort of penance for all the evil that he'd done as Parallax. So Hal pretty much brought him back from the atomized particles of Ollie's body, which is why Superman found the tingle at the start of the story, whereby some of the atomized particles of Ollie actually found their way onto Superman's costume. So we get the revelation of Ollie coming back and why he came back. And so you then get the further revelation when Hal takes Ollie to heaven, where they're greeted by the Phantom Stranger. And there's a really great line and some great moments where Hal actually stands up to the Phantom Stranger as the Spectre as a means of getting into heaven. So Ollie gets some answers from his soul, which actually parted from his body and is now in his own version of heaven, whereby he sees all of his best friends every day that have died. He continuously practices his archery skills and refines them, and he's just sort of enjoying this sort of blessed peace that he feels that he's earned. And Ollie was brought back by Hal at quote-unquote the best time of his life, so there was none of the baggage of the breakdown of the relationship between him and Dinah. There was none of the stuff that went on with Shadow in the 80s run by Mike Grell. There was none of the sort of baggage that Ollie sort of picked up along the way up until that point in his life. So he's sort of brought back at the time where he's the best version of himself, so to speak. And then you have the reintroduction of Connor Hawke, who, as I've said, is the illegitimate son of Oliver Queen when he was in college. So he shows up to save his old man from an occultist, who we find out later on who this occultist is, and he has close ties to Ollie throughout this storyline. There's a really great battle scene between Ollie and Connor Hawke fighting off some hellish demons, which they get opened a portal to hell by the occultist, and they are saved by a demon which has close ties to the occultist and the occultist's grandson. I won't spoil how all of that pans out, you'll have to just read it for yourselves. And there's also a really loving and really beautiful father and son moment where, you know, Oliver says to him, you know, let's go and get a drink, and Connor says to him, I don't drink, I'm a Zen Buddhist. But Ollie says to him at the end, I've spent years talking to Dinah, Bruce, Arthur, John, Wally, Diana, all of the members of the Justice League and all of his close friends and family. So at this point in his life, he just wants to have a conversation with his son and start to build a father and son relationship with Connor, which is a really beautiful moment. And they both sort of not so much walk off into the sunset, but they walk off, you know, with Ollie's arm around his kid and just walking off, beginning their conversation. I have to say, ashamedly, this is the first ever Green Arrow series that I've actually read, and I have to say, as an opening arc and as an opening storyline for me as a new reader, it's absolutely fantastic stuff. Kevin Smith's writing, storytelling and dialogue is just fantastic. I've read his Guardian Devil series where he rebooted Daredevil during the first 8 issues with Joe Quesada on the artwork. That was fantastic. He also went on to write another arc for Green Arrow, The Sounds of Violence, which is the follow-on arc from Quiver. He also went to write 2 Batman stories, Batman Cacophony with his best friend and comic book friend who got him back into reading comics, Walter Flanagan. And he also wrote a sequel to that, which was Batman the Widening Gyre, or Gaia, however you choose to pronounce it. So yeah, this is just absolutely fantastic. The art and the colouring by Phil Hester and Andy Parks is equally on par with Kevin Smith's writing. If you're a new fan of Green Arrow, if you're a fan of or if you're an established fan of Green Arrow, I highly recommend you check this out. If you're a fan of the Arrow TV show with Stephen Amell portraying Oliver Queen in that show, and you want to read some of the comic book storylines, I cannot recommend Quiver highly enough. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you everybody as always for watching. As always, feel free to leave a comment below in the comment section. Rate the video up or down, and if this is your first time viewing one of my videos and you'd like to see future content, by all means please feel free to subscribe, and until next time, this is Scampered896 signing off, and I will see you guys very soon with another review. Take care.